Good afternoon, everyone. It is Caitlin, and today we are making Elizabeth her very first dress. Alright, hello and welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. First, because this is the first dress we've made for Elizabeth, she needs to have a bodice drafted to her. So let's start with that. I'm going to use the scrap cotton, and we're just going to drape something on her. It works for, women, so why not dolls, right? Her penetration needs a little bit. Like that. That's fine. Okay, cool. Let's see. Let's do a high necked one. So we're just going to draw a line kind of where we want the neckline. And down the center front of her bodice, which there's a line there. Something like that. Connect those lines. Her back to the back. And then in the 1850s and 60s, the shoulder seam is behind the shoulder. It's going to go down like that. Her shoulder is here, and you go a little bit below that because we have the dropped arm's eye in the 50s and 60s. And I don't mind if there's excess here. There should be, actually, because that needs to be a dart. But directly under her arm, there needs to be a seam. Right across there. And then the waistline for the 50s needs to be quite low. Go. Okay. Now that should be her bodice. Take this out. By the way, this works the same for, women too, not just dolls. You can do this to anybody. Okay, that's just a little bit more even. Look, we have a bodice. There's the front part. Now I am going to lay this on her just like that for just a moment. What we're going to do is just follow that line to where that needs to be. And then here, where the other pieces, we're going to draw a line where that exactly meets. We'll do it on the back, which is fine. Back, I'm going to cut that out. The nice thing about doing this with dolls, the nice thing about doing this with dolls is that dolls don't complain when you pin them or do anything like that. So that's helpful. Unwrap her. And cut along my lines. Alright, so this is her back. Well, half the back anyway. It's quite a long back. Interesting. And where did the other piece go? Oh, it's still on her. That's right. And her front. That's all we really need for the moment. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to practice by making a silk dress for her. So I'm going to go grab some silk scraps. We're going to cut this out with seam allowance because notice there's no seam allowances on our pattern piece. Now I get to decide whether I want, it's the 50s, let's railroad it. And the railroading just means that the stripes are going to go across instead of vertical. So I think we're just going to railroad this. Not really super easy. Quite a full skirt. We don't need it all. So let's see here. I measured the doll. I need an 11-inch skirt, but with seam allowances, we're going to call that 12 inches. I'm just going to cut railroading stripes was quite popular in the 50s, so that's why we're doing this. We need it to be about a yard in width. I seriously thought about doing a tiered skirt with this one, but I figured, you know what, we drafted a pattern, let's make this one a little simpler. Although to be quite fair, the human version of this fabric is a tiered skirt. I can always add tiers to this later, like I can always add ruffles, so if I decide to do that later, that'd be great. Let's go ahead and sew up the seam. And I want these stripes to match pretty well, so that it looks right. So I'll sew that side, or that one seam in a moment. Let's go ahead and work on our bodice. I haven't drafted sleeves yet. I gotta remember to do that. Okay. I did say a back closing bodice with this, didn't I? Oh well, it's gonna be a front closing bodice because I wasn't processing that. I also do need to cut lining. So I wonder if might as well just use the scraps. Might as well, right? And all I did was measure her arm, which ended up being like 6 inches. Oh no, it was 5.5. And I added a 6 so she could bend her arm, and then 7 for seam allowance plus a little bit extra for ease. You know, I just realized that I railroaded the skirt and did not railroad these. So we're going to recut the bodices. This is what happens when I don't pay attention. Do a little bit. Actually, I think we're just going to do a regular loose cuff. Well, I don't want to do a closure on the sleeves. That's my thing. If I move this to a funnel sleeve, I want it about 6 inches long. So railroaded. Could do a straight sleeve on this too. I would only need it like 6 inches long if I did that. I'm going to do a straight sleeve. And the bottom part 3 inches. So like this, okay. I'm just going to cut 3 here. So how I did this is basically, this is how wide the top needs to be. So her arm side needs to be about 7 inches, and that includes some gathering ease. Then I measured around her cuff, and I got 1.5. Sorry, excuse me, I got 3 inches. Half that would be 1.5 because I have this folded. And then I added on an inch seam allowance, so I got 2 inches, and I just cut across. And I measured the length of her arm, and with seam allowances, well, her length of her arm is 5 inches, with seam allowances that would be 6 inches. So one thing I do need to do, I need to hollow out. Hollow out one side of it, just slightly. Like that. Okay. So what I can do now is right sides together. Sew the sleeves. It's going to give a really nice later 40s, early 50s look with this tight sleeve. I'm really shooting for very early 50s with this doll. So no pagoda sleeves yet. Those really I don't start seeing those till 54. So not doing that. Okay, so I have sleeves to sew. This is the railroaded bodice. Where's the railroaded back bodice? This goes here. I do need to cut this down the center because this is not a front closing bodice. Or it is a front closing bodice. Okay. So this goes here, which then connects to this. which connects to this. We're going to pin that and we'll stitch that seam. We're going to also stitch the shoulder seams here. Basically it gets stitched up just like a woman's dress. Although I'm not sure I've seen piping in doll dresses. Alright, so that gives me 2 sleeves, a skirt, and a bodice. I'm going to stitch all that up by machine, and we'll come back and talk about the next step. Alright, next step. Skirt, we're going to face it. So on the bottom, instead of doing a hem, we're going to do a facing, which I know we've done lots and lots of facings on the channel. So I have a whole video on just how to do a facing. I'm just going to leave this one raw because it's a silk dress and they weren't going to be washed very often, if at all. Really spot cleaned, if anything, so I don't have to really worry about that raveling. So that needs to be machine stitched, and we'll turn it up to the back and hand stitch it across. But I'm going to get to all my hand stitching in a moment. Sleeves, we're almost to the point where we're going to hand stitch. In fact, I'm going to turn the hem under, and I think the sleeves are going to be best hand stitched. If I can get them to cooperate. So we'll do both sleeves like that. I'm going to put all my hand stitching to the side because I'm going to get all my machine stitching done for the dress, do all my hand stitching, and then switch back and forth. I find that easier than just, you know, constantly going machine, hand, machine, hand, machine, hand. I find it much simpler just to pick one, do everything I can in that mode of sewing, and then do the other mode of sewing, and just switch back that way. I find it makes things more efficient that way. I did realize that I kind of stitched that wrong, but it's the inside, I don't care. Let's see, where did my pattern piece go? Here we are. Fold the raw edges under again so they're not raw. Pin that, and I'll stitch that by hand as well. In addition to figuring out what kind of closures I'm going to do on this thing. I don't know if I have hooks nice small enough. That would look decent, I guess. I don't know if I should bind the neckline or pipe it. So I'm going to whip stitch that. Look, it's like a little tiny mini bodice. It's so cute. Okay, I do need to figure out darts in a second too, but we'll get to that in a moment. Machine sew this, and then I can iron it up. That way we'll all be up hand sewing. So we're going to put the darts in now on her bodice. Arm size are a little tight, but I'm pretty sure that's just going to be because there's the seam allowance hasn't been taken yet, because I haven't had to put the sleeves in yet. I don't know, that looks pretty good. Other than that, looks pretty good. It's a little loose back here, but probably fix that by taking in some of the side seams a little bit. Alrighty, so dress is getting put together, but I haven't done a ton. I just did little bits and pieces of everything, so I'm going to show you what I did. So first of all, I put the facing in like we talked about. Went ahead and pleated the skirt. Those are the only things I'm not going to show you. Darts got put in, which I did show you, and then I was just over here putting in hooks and eyes, which is what I decided to do for the closure. I did bind the neckline and the waistline. I just felt piping was just going to look weird, even if I had very tiny piping. It was just going to look disproportionate. And I saw some extant doll dresses that seemed to have piping, but it was all decorative piping, not functional piping. And the other ones, it didn't look like there's piping at all. So I just decided, you know, we'll just not do it. Sleeves, I just put them in the same way we would do a normal woman's sleeve. And I am doing what I always do, which is to back stitch sleeves in. Even on machine stitch dresses, I just feel like doing the sleeves by hand or putting the sleeves in by hand makes it lay better. So the only way left is to put the skirt on, which I have been working on. I box pleated the skirt, and I think I did that purely because the dress that I have of this fabric is also box pleated. There wasn't really a lot of thought into that other than, oh, I box pleated that skirt. Let's do the same thing. And I like box pleating because it's easy. So I'm just taking the pleats and whipping them to the edge. Usually you'd whip this to the edge of the piping. I'm just whipping it to the edge of the binding that I did. And I probably will need to do a little bit of a false waistband, just a little mini one, since I made this not a front closing dress, but a side front closing dress. So then the back was kind of what it's looking like. It's like a little normal little dress, just on a much smaller scale. Alright, let's do a little bit of a waistband as soon as I tie this off. Just a small one. So I'm going to take most of these pins out. So there's just this little section, so you see this is called a dogleg closure. So the bodice closes over here, but the skirt closes over here, and that's just to keep the seam from being straight up the center where you would see it easier. It's a little bit more hidden this way. This will work. Need a little bit smaller. So I have that kind of folded over. I'm just going to put it right here, basically. Sandwiching the stitching, which I could do this part by machine. It's probably just as easy to do it by hand. Bind that, and I'm going to do the same on this side, and that way you put a little hook and eye there to kind of close that, and then we'll be done. So the dress is done. Hooks and eyes. She's very tall, like for the size of the bodice, it's a very long skirt. Hook and eye, hook and eye, a little tight across her bust, just a little bit though, not unmanageable, just a little tight. Do the skirt hook and eye before I forget. And there should be another hook and eye here. There it is, okay. And there's the top. Alright. There, she has a dress. It's a little tight across the back. Okay. I can fix that with the next dress. This one is fine. For a first try, technically a mock-up. That's pretty good. Needs a little bit more room across the back. I could do that. But here she is. That turned out so cute. Tuck that up in there. There we go. Very plain bodice. I mean, definitely the neckline can go up a little bit, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that. And she now has an entire outfit on. It only took like half a year. So I think next we're going to work on outerwear, other dresses, she's a bonnet, that sort of thing. Those will be the next couple months installments. But thank you so much for joining me today as we made Elizabeth her first dress, a silk dress. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here on Monday.